Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers lose to the Colorado Avalanche 3-2 at Madison Square Garden, but they lose in overtime and they get a point. And this is one of those rare occurrences where you have to be feeling not terrible. I mean, this is a really good Avalanche team. They were coming off of a loss to the Islanders. So the odds were kind of stacked against the Rangers. Adam Fox this is his third straight game out. And it's another 6-on-5 late goal for the Rangers, which I've just been begging for the longest time. And now that's 2 for 2 in opportunities. Obviously, 2 of the last 3 games, they beat Ottawa. They didn't need to pull the goalie, but they get it done against Dallas. That one was with a little more than 2 minutes left. This one was with 40 seconds left, or a little bit more than 40 seconds left. And it was Artemi Panarin who ties it up. And the Rangers had tied it up earlier in the period where Conor Sheary gets his first goal as a Rangers. So I like the gumption and just the fight and the battle for the Rangers. Look, in an overtime situation against Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, and Marty Necas, like it's gonna be a bit of a problem. And ultimately Nathan MacKinnon just puts on a clinic, basically breaks Will Borgen's ankles in that overtime session, and Colorado wins at 3-2. MacKinnon had scored, and the goal that gave the Avalanche a 2-1 lead, but less than 5 minutes left in regulation. So the tone of the episode is very different. Where let's say that goal holds and Colorado wins in regulation, for me it would have been, despite the fact that they tied the Dallas game, just more of the idea of, hey, like finding a way to get a point. Which it's been like the Rangers have done a better job this year in terms of comeback ability, but yet still there's been instances where the game was tied in the third period. The Rangers found a way to not get a point. And I just look at this and look like we'll see where things go from here. It's a quick turnaround. I mean, luckily it's a night game, not an afternoon game, Sunday against Vegas. So a little and no travel. So it could be way worse. But I just think that this was a point where it's hard to be too critical. It really is. Because again, like I thought they played the right way. Colorado definitely, as the game went on, for sure had the advantage. Look, they are the better team. They had the firepower, they had the speed, but Igor Shesterkin was really good as well. Making 39 saves on 42 shots. So yeah, I like some things I'm seeing. Again, when you factor in no Adam Fox, but even just beyond that, like just the ability again to not only tie the game once, but to do it again in that late game situation. And hey, like who knows if that game goes to a shootout, Rangers could have very well gotten the 2 points. Doesn't happen. And I think that it's one of those things where let's see how the Vegas game goes as far as whether like how the point feels solid after the fact. Now, if you lose in regulation to Vegas tomorrow, it's takes on a little bit of a different feeling slightly. But all I'll say is this, like the Rangers, where things could have really gotten away from them when you think about it, right? Especially that just ugly bad loss against Tampa where Fox gets hurt. You find a way to get 2 points against the Stars. You go to Ottawa, you win. You get 1 point against Colorado. Like this could really shape up as a very surprisingly good week stretch against some of the better teams in the league. I mean, I think just when you think about Colorado, Dallas, and Vegas, and we'll see how the Vegas game goes, obviously, but like those are probably your 3 best teams in the West. Again, standings aside, it's more of a pedigree. Look, obviously, Edmonton has gotten off to a slow start. Like, to be fair, look, obviously they made the Cup final last 2 years. So obviously Edmonton is for sure in that conversation. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that these are definitely the class of the West. Vegas has been playing a better brand lately. They're coming off of a win against the Devils, which we'll talk about after we go through this Avalanche game. But I just think that, and I've been someone that's been, critical of this Ranger team. I still think that their big weakness and hole is top 6 related and not really having the finishers that you need. But I just think that the structure, the overall defensive side of things, and, I think that they are really starting to listen to Mike Sullivan and embracing the things that he's telling them to do. I'm not saying he's the perfect coach, but I do think he's getting through to them, and you're seeing those results play out here. Who actually had a really, the person I've probably been the harshest on, JT Miller. I thought he was very good in this game. Like, as good as, even though he had the 3 points against Ottawa and it was a step in the right direction, right? I acknowledge there were some good things there. He really did build upon that. And maybe it was just matched up against MacKinnon. They had the Miller, Trocheck, Sheary line go against the MacKinnon line. And that may have gotten the best of JT Miller, but he looked like he had way more jump, some good opportunities, shooting the puck, right? Not like just things going off of his foot or his leg. Like there was flow. And he really looked like one of the better Rangers on the ice. And it's refreshing to see that. If he's capable of giving you that, it's a game changer for this team. But yeah, same lineup as the game before. Now, the good news is on the Jonathan Quick front, and it seemed this way, he was the backup. Spencer Martin was sent down, and so they haven't officially said anything, but I'd be stunned if Jonathan Quick was not in net against Vegas. I mean, he certainly will be. This was a big workload for Igor. Igor has, it's a pretty lengthy stretch when you think about it. I mean, Monday night, they played against Dallas. So that's one thing. Then Thursday against Ottawa, Saturday game against Colorado. It's just he's played a lot lately. So and back-to-back situations anyway, except when Quick was hurt, they typically split it up. So expect Quick to face Vegas. So Mackenzie Blackwood was in that for the Avalanche, and Scott Wedgwood is still injured. Blackwood was a lot better in this game than he was against the Islanders. Definitely got a much better version of Blackwood. And I thought the Rangers really, by and large, the first 10 to 15 minutes, first 10 minutes, the Rangers played very well. It hit a point where maybe the first 5 minutes or so, Colorado had a little bit of better play, but just generally speaking, I thought the Rangers got off to a really good start in this game. Sure, maybe by the end of the first period, Colorado started to take over a little bit, but the shots on goal ended up being 10-9 Rangers. And again, I just felt like they played well. And as far as any action in the first went, there was one penalty, and it was to Cale Makar at 7:26. He interfered with JT Miller. And this was actually, after the first maybe 30 seconds weren't so good, the rest of it was very good. Rangers had 2 power plays. This was a good one. The other one was a very bad one. And the Rangers stuck with the 5-forward unit. It sounds like Sullivan is considering going with Scott Moore on the number 1 power play. However, I don't expect that to happen just yet. Like, if I had to make the guess as far as the first power play against Vegas, it's probably going to be the same 5 forwards. But there was a couple of posts that were hit on that power play, Panarin being one of them and then Cooley another. So they really came close. It was frustrating, but encouraging at the same time. And yeah, I mean, look, Colorado had their chances. That's the thing. There's high-end danger offense on the Colorado Avalanche. Look, you could argue the depth, which is still pretty damn good, to be honest, when you look at it. You could argue that maybe there's some question marks there, I guess, but when you're rolling out again, that top line is just deadly. And the Rangers did as good as they could, I felt, to limit them, really. And so credit goes to a lot of the defensemen, where Gavrikov and Schneider did a really nice job. Again, Vlad Gavrikov is just great. Really been excellent. And, he logged over 24 minutes. Brendan Schneider as well has played a lot more. Schneider's done a nice job. It's interesting, though. I feel like, when you hear Mike Sullivan talk, and I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, and I know it's a specific situation, but Braden Schneider, they had 4 defensemen on for the 3-on-3. Braden Schneider was not one of them. And remember, Adam Fox isn't even on the team. Like he isn't even healthy right now. So it ended up going from Gavrikov to Robertson to Morrow to Borgen. Again, that's one, maybe that was a speed. I don't know. Just hearing a question was asked about Schneider, and I feel like while he was very positive and gave solid remarks, I don't know, just reading between the lines here, Schneider's there by necessity, but I still feel like the coaching staff this coaching staff isn't totally in love with him. That all said, look, I think that Braden Schneider did a pretty solid job. And this is again a player that I feel like hadn't had a great start to his season and hasn't elevated the way I'd want him to. I think, look, given the assignment, pretty good for Braden Strider. And really, he made a very nice play at the end of the game, too, where MacKinnon, with 10 seconds left, had a chance, and Strider makes a nice play on him to break it up. So yeah, just another observation before we kind of jump back into the second period. Uh, I thought Matthew Robertson looked good. Like I don't always say that, but I thought Robertson looked pretty smooth, like skating wise. I thought he had a pretty solid game. And really, it's just interesting how, again, like Vakanainen just like not even much of a thought right now. He is, I mean, I wouldn't have predicted that. Not that I was the biggest Vakanainen fan, but I would have thought, okay, like he will be one of the 6 defensemen and Matthew Robertson will be, well, we may see him every now and then. Robertson will be the 7th defenseman. Not the case. Like it is totally flipped to the point where, remember I was saying for a while, like maybe like they'll, rotate here and there and things like that. But honestly, I really think that Robertson has earned that spot. I think that the coaching staff does like him based on what I can tell from the ice time that he gets. So, yeah, it was really a nice job by him and Scott Morrow too. Like Morrow, I'm not the biggest Scott Morrow fan, but I am a fan of giving him an opportunity. I think that like he's a young player, and I'm willing to take the mistakes that come and the rookie growing pains. Just because again, the alternative again, like would I rather see Morrow and Vakanainen in lineup? I'd rather see Morrow, even though I don't know long term how he'll be. There's some interesting skill. There's an interesting skill set that he brings to the table, but there are definitely issues defensively for sure. He needs to get more confidence. I think slowly he's doing that lately. And also with the forwards, Conor Sheary, as I had said before, he did, we saw it against Ottawa. He would remain in the top 6 with Trocheck and Miller. So Brodzinski, that line that was on the fourth line, that fourth line did not play a whole lot in this game. And I'm not surprised by that. It's Carrick, Brodzinski, and Radish. It's not a terrible fourth line, but it's not a great one. And yeah, it didn't, I feel like Sam Carrick's ice time has decreased, just lately in general, where he was playing a lot more, I feel like, earlier on. Anyway, going back to the second period, it's a tie game. And at 3:31, not a great penalty by Johnny Brodzinski. He holds Victor Olofsson, but the Rangers do kill it off. It was a good job. Believe it or not, the Colorado Avalanche power play has not been great this year, which is surprising. It's especially been really bad on the road. So they kill it off, but not too far after it. Well, I guess a little bit after it. At 7:06, Parker Kelly scores the 6th goal of the season from Malinsky and Natchez. And it was a tip in front by Parker Kelly. A little bit of a line change situation going on for the Rangers where it's like Panarin with Laba and Cooley, which is obviously not the line. And it also had Borgen and Morrow. So again, not exactly the pairing and forward line that you'd be accustomed to together. And it ends up being a situation where Borgen drops a stick. Natchez is able to, along the boards, pass it out to the point from Malinsky. And Scott Morrow shoves Parker Kelly to the ice, and Kelly is still able to get a stick on it. I'm not sure if I think that probably hurt Igor a little bit. It goes off of Igor and in. Not his fault, that one. And so, yeah. I feel like Will Borgen's play since his return has not been quite to what we saw before. It hasn't been bad, and I still think Will Borgen is definitely like, when you look at the defensive group, he comes out as one of the better defensemen they have, without a doubt. But yeah, I don't know. Just feel like he's been not quite as sharp as he was previously. So 1-0 Colorado. And yeah, like I felt like that second period was definitely advantage Avalanche, not like by a great amount. They had shot the Rangers 13-8. It wasn't like it was in Colorado, where that was really, especially that second period, I remember, was really all Avalanche. It wasn't like that in this game. But Colorado, I feel like, progressively did get better in this game. So it's 1-0 Avalanche going to the third. And finally, Conor Sheary is able to get his first goal as a Ranger. His first NHL goal since April of 2024. It's been a very, very long time, because he played most of last year in the AHL. And just, yeah. And look, like, he plays hard. I'll give him that. He's got some speed. He's just, look, at this point in his career, he's not really a guy that is going to score a lot of goals. I mean, whereas he did, look, there was times, early in Pittsburgh, I mean, he was really a thorn on the Rangers' side, but Sheary gets his first goal of the season from Trocheck and Miller. And it was a nice play by Trocheck in the defensive zone with a pass to a streaking Sheary. And I think he knew that he had Natchez, who's obviously a forward, not a defenseman. He kind of took advantage of that, used his speed, um, got a nice angle, and takes a snapshot and scores past Blackwood. And gives JT Miller credit too, where he's able to find Trocheck, and where he looked up and didn't just blindly throw it, along the boards. He found Trocheck in the middle of the ice in the defensive zone. So again, like just a little bit of patience and a little bit of creativity, if you will, by Trocheck, and seeing that they had Natchez there, and they're able to tie it up at 1. And then at that point, it's kind of like, all right, like just got to find a way to get this game to overtime. And it got dicey. At 5'9", Matthew Robertson trips Nichushkin, but the Rangers do kill it off. Then at 10:20, Zibanejad is held by Valar Nichushkin. So this was a really bad power play by the Rangers, though. Whereas the first one, they got a lot of chances. The second one, not so much. Like, not at all, actually. It was pretty pathetic. They never even set up in the offensive zone. And so, you couldn't feel great about the idea that you were going to hold Colorado off the board. And ultimately, at 15:26, Nathan MacKinnon scores his 23rd goal of the season from Natchez and Manson. And it was batted in legally. There was thought that maybe they'd look at it in a review, but I think it was the right call not to. That call wasn't going to change. It was below the crossbar. And the one criticism I'll make, Igor was fantastic. The Natchez shot is one that he's going to want to just save cleanly, because he wasn't able to save it cleanly. It allowed MacKinnon to just somewhat easily bat it in. Steiner was the one that was on MacKinnon. You probably want Steiner being a little bit closer to him and a little bit more physical to prevent the MacKinnon bat from going in. But yeah, that's what happens when that line kind of caves you, and that's what happened. In an otherwise good game for the Trocheck line, they take a 2-1 lead. Then soon thereafter, there was actually a potential goal for Colorado that was not, where and the ruling on the ice was no goal, and that stood, where the puck never crossed the line. It was close. But then I think it's one of those things where I think the goal might have been Brock Nelson's. I'm not positive. But if they did count the goal, then I think the Rangers would have challenged for goal interference, which I think Landeskog, it was unlikely that was going to be a goal that stood for Colorado for a number of reasons, but it didn't even go that far. So it's 2-1 Colorado, and Igor makes some really good saves actually at 2-1. Like, this was really close to becoming 3-1 Colorado, but the Rangers get it to the point where they pull the goalie. And you know what? Getting that goal the other night against Dallas, it's got to give you some confidence. It just does. And I think it did here. And give all 6 players credit for really keeping the puck in the zone, not giving up. That is such the will. I mean, it's not about, in these situations, it's not really about the talent. It's simplistic. It's really, truly putting the puck on net and making things happen. And, I thought Alexis Lafreniere had another just bad game, but the one place where he did well, I felt it was the 6-on-5, where that shift I felt was one of the few good ones for him. Really, the puck has just died on his stick. It's really discouraging. Again, Lafreniere just has not been very good lately, and just generally speaking. But here, he does get an assist. It's a goal by Artemi Panarin, his 10th goal of the season from Zibanejad and Lafreniere at 1918. And Panarin is able to keep the puck in when the puck was in the air. They actually reviewed it after the fact to see if maybe the stick was above the shoulder. It was not. The play stood, the goal stood. But, Lafreniere is able to retrieve the puck after Panarin keeps it in, does a nice job of kind of settling things down, getting the puck to Zibanejad at the right point, who then passes to Panarin at the left point, and it's the quick one-timer release with Will Cooley providing the screen in front. That's the formula. It is. It's, Will Cooley, I'm not sure if Blackwood saw it. It's Panarin. He's got that good shot when he wants to use it, and it ties it up at 2 with about 40 seconds left. That's a big point. If the Rangers are able to somehow make the playoffs this year, and it's barely, and let's say it is by 1 point, it's things like that. These are the things that I talk about that can make the difference. And so, we go to overtime, and look, the odds were stacked against the Rangers at that point. I already brought it before. I thought it was interesting, some of the deployment. And what I might have done is there was an offside on Colorado where Scott Morrow tried to make a play in the offensive zone. Didn't work out. Loses the puck at that point, but battles hard enough to the point where it's an offside on me. So I'm not going to be critical of Morrow. And again, you do want to see him taking some chances and being confident. So this isn't a negative. But what ends up happening is they end up going with Laba, Cooley, and Borgen. What you could have maybe done is go back to Garrett. Again, It's not a huge thing. I'm not going to make a big deal about it, but you could have went back to maybe Gavrikov at that point because it had been enough time where, it hadn't been on for that long. But they go to Borgen as the fourth defenseman playing in that overtime. And I believe at the time, Brock Nelson, I think, won the faceoff. I don't believe originally that the MacKinnon crew was. I can't remember as far as the three Avalanche players that were on, but what I do know is that the entire time it was Cooley, Laba, and Borgen. Yeah, Laba loses the faceoff clean. I believe to Brock Nelson, I think. And they just were never able to get the puck back. And McKinnon, they're able to, use that skill, use that talent, and there's so much speed and so much you have to, basically defend. And it ends up kind of being a one-on-one between MacKinnon and Borgen. And MacKinnon just makes a great move on Borgen. And then it's a backhand roof job under the crossbar past Shesterkin for the Avalanche win. So, Nathan MacKinnon has just been unbelievable. He's got 24 goals. And how many assists does he have? 24 it's just ridiculous. 48 points, a plus 35 in 28 games. He's just taking over. I mean, this is your MVP basically at this point of the season, is Nathan MacKinnon. So that's going to happen. And the Rangers lose 3-2 in overtime. So Rangers record now is 15-12-3. And now we will see what they do against the Vegas Golden Knights team that really came off of a very, very stingy defensive solid win against a Devil team that's really struggling. But I go into this Vegas game with more confidence than I did going into the Colorado game for a number of reasons, but I think that it's going to have to be another one of those grinded out, low scoring, low event style games. I'd be surprised if it wasn't like that. Jonathan Quick has been out for a while and was hurt. So how does he respond? Right. There's that question mark, but he's always kind of defied, all of the doubts that I've had in Quick. He seems to just erase quickly. So, but of course, he hasn't played in a couple. I think it's been a couple weeks. I want to say the last game he played was the Utah game, which will by the time the Golden Knight game happens, I think it will have been just a little over 2 weeks since that game. So there could be a little bit of rust in play, but it is a quick turnaround. The Rangers have struggled in the second game back-to-backs, but this is advantageous from the travel side because, again, both games are at MSG, and the fact that you had an early afternoon game against Colorado and then a night game against Vegas. So all things considered, not terrible. It's not really a big excuse if things don't go right. So if the Rangers can find a way to beat Vegas or even get a point, honestly, even a point, like that really caps off a very good week. If you get no points, it will kind of sour what was an otherwise really quality week for the New York Rangers. And if nothing else, even if they lose the regulation, they've kept themselves in it. In what is one of the craziest Eastern Conference, from top to bottom through about 30 games or so, a little less than that for most teams. Like, I can't remember it being this bunched up, really, again, from top down, and especially in the Metropolitan Division. So every little thing is crucial. And I thought when Fox got hurt that, and maybe this still does come to fruition, I thought, okay, this team is kind of fucked, to the point where they really could take a big, big nosedive in the standings, but that has not been the case. Give them a lot of credit for really battling against good competition and coming out of there with points. And that's exactly, what you saw in this Colorado game where, they don't have as much talent as the Avalanche. No one's going to, argue that. But they were able to tie the game late, another 6-on-5 goal, this time by Panarin. And they were able to get the point. They lose in overtime by a score of 3-2 to the Colorado Avalanche. And now they will take on another really, really good Western Conference foe in the Vegas Golden Knights in a Sunday night game at MSG where Jonathan Quick will in all likelihood be in net. And the Rangers will try to continue doing their thing. They played, really solid hockey. And we'll see. But again, Rangers lose, final score 3-2 in overtime against the Avalanche, and now they will have a quick turnaround, another game at MSG, back-to-back situation, Rangers versus the Vegas Golden Knights.